नहीं आ रही है. Hello everyone. Due to this small technical glitch, we have started a bit late, and sorry for that. Uh, First of all, I would like to extend a warm good afternoon to all present in India, and bright and cheerful good morning to all our friends in London. Respected Professor Gulab Chand Ram Jaiswal, our patron of the event, and Honorable Vice Chancellor, Patliputra University, Patna, respected Professor
अभी
Indrajit
थोड़ा सा
Prasad
निकालो.
Award, our chairperson of the event and also our principal, respected
थोड़ा
Dr.
सा.
Binod Kumar Jha, our IQAC coordinator, respected Professor Vinay Kumar, our IDC convener, respected senior colleagues, friends and dear students. I, Dr. Amar Kumar, coordinator of this event, on behalf of Anugrah Narayan Singh College, Barh, would like to welcome all distinguished participants and especially our guests and speakers from OTERMANS Institute, London, Dr. Paul D. OTERMANS, Mr. Dev Aditya, and Mr. Gerard Jensen to our first international webinar during this COVID-19 pandemic on a very important and pertinent topic, coping with higher education, research, and employability during and after the pandemic. The overarching theme of this webinar is to discuss how to pivot your skills to survive and excel in higher education and jobs market during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this COVID-19 pandemic has created an enormous challenge for business worldwide, that is to continue operating despite massive shutdowns of offices and other facilities. Higher education is no other exception. In these challenging and fast changing times, it is of utmost importance that we evolve our pedagogical skills to meet the new sets of demand that has come forth. The theme of this webinar can't be of much more relevance than it is in these times. The COVID-19 pandemic that has come before us has a silver lining associated with it. Apart from the challenges, it has brought immense opportunity. Till now, we were in the blind race of development since long have looked forward only that are required. This pandemic has given us an opportunity to take a pause, look sideways and behind, try not to repeat, if not to able to undo the same mistake. In the context of higher education, this pandemic has forced us to explore into various possibilities that are present, but have long ignored due to our reluctance of giving up on our traditional methods. Take, for example, of pandemic will subside with time, but this shift from traditional chalk and talk method to online mode will have a lasting effect, and gradually higher education will shift towards blended learning. The happening of this webinar is itself another example of opportunity that this pandemic has brought. Who, would, who could have thought before a college situated in rural India would co-host a webinar and and come on one platform with an institution based in London within such short notice and with such minimal infrastructure and logistical requirements. This pandemic has also given us an opportunity to look at one of the major goals of education, that is, to strive to develop versatile human beings who can shoulder the responsibilities of the nation and society. The pandemic is helping us to develop resilience in one's character and persona. Rather, we need to develop competence. We now have to look at uncharted career frontiers in order to stay afloat and have relevance. It is of great pleasure that we have amongst us three distinguished personalities who are working in this area in various countries, helping students, teachers, and professionals to understand many facets of higher education and research and bridging the gap between academia and request our principal, Professor Indrajit Prasad Roy, sir, to welcome our guest and to kindly present his views on this important topic.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yes. Good afternoon to all. Welcome in this webinar. This is a great moment for Anugrah Narayan College family because we are organizing first international webinar today in a very relevant topic, that is coping with higher education, research and employability during and after the pandemic. This webinar has been organized by International Quality Assurance Cell, Internal Quality Assurance Cell, IQAC of A.N.S. College, Barh, in collaboration with OTERMANS Institute, London, under the umbrella of Patliputra University, Patna. We are thankful to patron of this webinar, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Gulab Chand Ram Jaiswal, sir. Anugrah Narayan Singh College family is indebted to eminent great educationists and speakers of this international webinar. First, Mr. Dev Aditya, International Award winning social activist, entrepreneur, and educationist from UK, for giving his valuable time for this international webinar. Thank you, sir, for giving us your costly time from your busy schedule. Our second speaker is Dr. Paul D. OTERMANS. She is principal and chair of OTERMANS Institute and deputy chair of the Board of Trustees, GU, at Cambridge University. She is an educationist, academic at Brussels, Brunel University, London, and formerly at University of East London. We are very much thankful, Madam, for giving your valuable time for this international webinar. And our third speaker, Mr. G. Jensen, is a seasoned researcher at Brunel University, London, with research experience in technical training. He is currently also the CPO of Solar Biovic, a sustainable energy fuel source company. Thank you, sir, for your kind cooperation and support for this international webinar. From busy schedule, you all have given us your very costly time for this webinar. Again, thanks. In organizing this webinar, all credit goes to IQAC coordinator, Dr. Vinod Kumar Jha, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, and IDC convener, Professor Vinay Kumar, Department of History, and their team. Organizing Secretary, Dr. Hina Rani, Department of Philosophy. Joint Secretary, Mr. Jyoti Mala, Department of Philosophy. Convener, Mr. Bipin Nautiyal, Department of Philosophy. Joint Convener, Mr. Pratik Kumar, Department of Psychology. Coordinator, Dr. Amar Kumar, Department of Chemistry. Joint Coordinator, Dr. Sushobhan Paladi, Head of the Department of Chemistry. Technical Committee, Dr. Rajneesh Kumar, Department of Physics. Mr. Shibrat Ravidas, Department of Economics. Dr. Anuj Kumar, Deepak Kumar, Navneet Kumar Singh. And its advisory committee, Dr. Ajit Kumar, Head of the Department of Mathematics. Satyendra Jha, Department of Sanskrit. Dr. Rachna Jaiswal, Department of Philosophy. Mr. Vijay Kumar, Department of Psychology. Dr. Vinita Gupta, Department of Hindi. Rajiv Ranjan, Department of Botany. And again Rajiv Ranjan, Department of Science. I am very much thankful to all teachers, research scholars, students, staff of this college, and other participants who are participating this international webinar. Although in this critical financial position, Indian government is also trying for economic revival through financial support to industry, MSMEs, and for rural jobs through MG Narega and Atmanirbhar Bharat for all. As per a study, in near future, economic revival will be U-shape, not in V-shape. As per this topic of this international webinar, our speakers will enlighten us and discuss fully on the higher education, research, and jobs during and after the COVID-19 period. Again, thanks to all to the organizing secretary and convener coordinator for next. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your welcome address and this important topic. I would like now to call upon our organizing secretary, Dr. Hina Rani, to welcome our first speaker of this event, Dr. Paul D.
Excuse me, ma'am as well. The order of speaking is Paul D, Gerard, and myself. This is just to double confirm because I think the order was shifted in the previous talk. So it's Paul D, Gerard, and then Devaditya. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Just one thing, Deva, I have to say something before the apology starts. I'll speak. Okay. Hello, Dave. Are you? Yeah. I have to say something on behalf of IQAC. Yeah, a very warm good afternoon as well as good morning to each and every good morning, especially for my overseas speakers. And although I'm not supposed to say I'm not entitled for Thanksgiving work, but that has been designated for someone else. But since I personally feel obliged to Paul D, Gerard, and Deva, all these three have really helped me a lot. So I feel I must say a few words for them. I must say my thanks. I must show my gratitude to them. And one thing on behalf of IQAC, I must assure that the next 120 minutes is going to be very fruitful for the students and exciting for all our academic colleagues because of the presence of these three speakers. Really, thanks. Again, I am thankful to Paul D, Gerard, and Deva. And please carry on. Hina, over to you.
Thanks, sir. So now we are going to start the technical session, and in this session, our first speaker is Paul D. Artemis. Before we start the session, let me say something about Paul D. Dr. Paul D. Artemis holds a PhD in cognitive neuroscience and cognitive psychology. He is currently an academic specializing in education at Brunel University, London. Apart from her PhD, she holds a bachelor degree in natural science from Radboud University in the Netherlands, a bachelor diploma from USA, and also researched extensively at the University of Basel, Switzerland. She was elected as the first woman president of the union in a decade and was also named in the top 100 list of women who have helped shape Brunel University. She recently created a social enterprise called OTERMANS Institute, which works in 4 countries across the globe and has recently entered into a contract to train 25,000 students in Uttarakhand, India. She is also a present deputy chair of the graduate at Cambridge University. Ms. Artemis has also launched the first COVID-19 book called Together, an anthology from COVID-19 period along with Dev Aditya. The book will be available on Amazon from next month. Now, I request Paul to start the first session. Thank you. It's over to Paul. Paul.
Unmute. Just Paul D, we are.
Welcome, everyone,
Wow.
and thank you for having us today and for the lovely introduction. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to put them in the Zoom chat and we can address them later accordingly. I would love to hear your thoughts and hear what you have to say, and also what your experiences are during this pandemic that has hit us all. I would like to start with something of an engagement piece. I know there's over 150 people in the Zoom, and I know there's many more on the YouTube link. So this only really works, I think, for the people on Zoom, but I'm going to try it anyway. So I'm going to launch a poll where I'm going to give a question to see what our audience actually looks like. So the question will be, what is your role? And you can either be a student or a staff member, just for us to see what our audience looks like. I'm hoping this is going to work without technical problems.
I'm a student.
It's going to be on a poll, so you should be able to see this question now. It asks you, what is your role? Just press either student or staff.
Yes, I am a staff. Associate Professor of Philosophy.
One thing I would like to add, Paul D, I have gone through the registration, and I think the more than 50% are the academic staff, and the remaining person are the research scholar and students.
Okay, thank you very much for that. It also is clear on the poll, indeed, about 50-50. That's great to hear. Now we know a little bit more about our audience. Thank you very much for that. What I would like to start my part of this session with is talking about how the education sector here in the west of Europe, particularly in the UK, has quickly dealt with the pandemic issues that we faced. I believe the lockdown in the UK started roughly at the same time as in India, around the 20th of March. Everyone was told, no more lectures, no more workshops. We all have to do this online now from home. And I'm sure you all faced similar challenges as we faced. Quickly adapting our sessions to an online environment is difficult. It's not something we're used to. When you're in your teaching in your classroom with your students, you can easily interact with one another. You can walk around, students can walk around, discuss things with one another. This is all possible online, but it takes a little bit of training and also a bit of try and error. Whether we have technology issues, sometimes we don't have Wi-Fi, sometimes the microphone isn't working. I think we all have faced every possible problem by now. And still we have sometimes difficulties managing the situation because it's not always in our control. But I think we all adapted to this new world of learning quite quickly. So I think we can all already be proud of ourselves, of what we all have achieved in such short notice. If I speak from the UK, I believe most universities in the UK in the higher education sector had to deliver their last 2 to 4 weeks of teaching online. That is still a major part of the curriculum, of the syllabus. And often this was also crucial for the exam or the assessment the students had to do. For the students, it was also really difficult because they didn't come to the classroom. Everything was reliable online. Not all students have similar access to everything. And it might be very crowded at home when your whole family is at home. Your brothers and sisters are there, your parents, everybody is now all of a sudden in one household. And we're all using the computer and the internet. And sometimes this causes a few clashes. So we also, in higher education, we're not only teaching students, we're also providing a lot of pastoral care. And in times of a pandemic like this, which none of us has ever imagined it would happen, and no one has ever been able to deal with this, because for all of us, this is the first time we're dealing with such a huge global issue. Pastoral care and one's well-being is probably more important than ever before. So one way a lot of UK universities adapted to this was by using a so-called virtual office hours, where we all provide a few hours a week where we have our office, which is now probably our living room for most people, as an open door policy where students can come and talk to us, whether that's on Skype, whether that's on Zoom, it doesn't matter, whatever platform you prefer to use. So we had to adapt to this new world of learning. Now, what we traditionally tend to do in higher education, and I think this is true globally, is we tend to give a lot of the didactic content, and didactic means the lectures, the actual teaching material. We tend to deliver those in lectures, where someone like me, for instance, is talking to the group of students, and I impose the knowledge on them. I might use PowerPoint slides, or I might use the textbook, and we go over different sections. Now this, if you turn this into an online environment, can turn boring rather quickly, because I cannot take use of the space, I cannot walk around. It's very difficult, or it's more difficult to prompt questions to students. If not everyone, for instance, uses their video, you might not see their facial expressions to see whether they understood what you're saying, and more. So what we tend to do when we move to online learning is a really blended learning approach. However, a blended learning approach only works if it's truly blended. What I mean by that is we really need to mix. We need to provide some of our content that our students need to know, really in a didactic way. And we could do that, for instance, by pre-recorded videos. The students can watch in their own time. Now, they should not be very long, maybe 20 minutes max, because that's, we know from research in education, we know that that's roughly the attention span of students in our age group, meaning from mid-secondary school to end of university. Because I'm not talking today about primary school, because that would be a totally different ballgame. The students there have totally different requirements and needs. Now, when we have then delivered our didactic material, our 20 to maybe 15 to 25-minute videos, we can then perhaps use the other time that we have during the week available for interactive sessions. Now, one way we can do the interactive sessions is, for instance, as we do it today. We have lots of people in one call, and then we could even put people in breakout rooms. I'm not going to do that today, don't worry. That would need a lot of more managing from our side as well. And we could do activities all together. And that is one way where we can see whether the students understood what we told them at the beginning of the week. So we start with our 20-minute videos at the beginning of the week. And then we move to our interactive activities later on, where we not only test the knowledge, we see they can immediately apply the knowledge. Because more and more and more now, in the 20th century, it is important that we apply knowledge we learn. If you're looking for a job after you graduate, whatever discipline you studied, whatever subject you did, it doesn't matter. It's about applying the knowledge you learned. Recalling all the text doesn't gonna get you the job. You need to showcase your skills, your ability to communicate, your ability to work in a team, your ability to be assertive, be able to present yourself. And not just presenting yourself as an individual, but also presenting your ideas and showing how creative you are and how you would tackle a problem so that you can come up with the best solution that there is. And that can be a tricky thing sometimes to do online. But I think we're all learning quite quickly and adapting to the new situation. One part that is probably more, well, it's both for teachers and staff, to be honest, is getting used to technology. I think we all have our smartphones nowadays. We can all say, I think, we are used to technology, because I think we all use, the smartphone. I'm not sure if you can, mine, I'm using it every day. I'm talking to my friends. I'm listening to YouTube recordings. I might do some tests on it as well. But that's not everything. When we're doing learning online, we need to have many, many more tools available to us. We're sharing our screens. We're making sure everybody can talk. People putting mute, unmute, we're recording things. It is a much more different ballgame than when we do something in the classroom. So we all also need to train ourselves, both the students and the staff more from an operational sort of managing perspective on how to deal with these new technology tools that seem to pop out every week. I think Zoom gets more and more functions every week. So we all need to quickly adapt and learn all those new technologies, which is quite a challenge for a lot of people. Now, the digital world also, as was nicely said in the introduction, also provides us with new opportunities. Yes, it is a difficult situation. And yes, we're going to, we have to learn it probably step by step. But now we're learning something in a much, much faster pace and a much, much shorter window than we normally would do. Normally we might take our time, learn something properly, try it out. There's no time to try out things at the moment. We just have to do it. No trial and error. It's just going to be happening as we speak. So we're trying to move away from the traditional lecture where someone is talking for, 45 minutes, 90 minutes, and really move to the blended learning approach. Now, one thing we also do with OTERMANS Institute, what we like to do is team-based learning. Team-based learning is a very efficient way that you can use in the classroom when it comes also to blended learning. Team-based learning is a method that is highly used in education in the past, I would say 5 years, where students are put into groups and the groups stay the same throughout the semester or the term. Groups are usually relatively small in size, maybe between 5 to 6 to 8 students. And before every lecture, before every session, before every day, you will have to give them some task, maybe a reading of a chapter in a book, maybe a news article that is currently very hip in the news, and maybe a magazine, whatever it is that you want to give them. You can also give them to watch a video. The students prepare this task beforehand at home. They study the relevant material. And when they come to the classroom, we're not spending many, many minutes on going over this material. No, what we're trying to do instead is to practice this. We're taking it immediately into practice. Because as I said before, when you go to the workplace, you have to do things, right? You're not there recalling from a book. You are showcasing your skills, whatever skill that is that you have studied. So what you do with team-based learning, if you do it as it's supposed to be designed, the first instance you give the students a small test, maybe 8 to 10 multiple choice questions. Individually, students go over those, let's say 8 questions, and give their answers. They can just write it on a piece of paper in front of them. You give them maybe 5 minutes to do that. It's a really quick test. It should be, if they have studied the material you give them, it should be really obvious for them to give the answer. So we're not tricking them here. It's a very quick test to do. Then after these 5 minutes, we're not revealing any answers yet. The students are going to then do the same 8 questions, but now in a group, in the groups that you have defined beforehand. So to make this more fun, what we tend to do with OTERMANS Institute, in the first session, the students form a team name and they create sort of their own flag or their own logo. So that is really their identity as a team. And they stay in that team throughout the term. So an example of where we have successfully embedded that was in a school in Dehradun, where each team in the class became an animal of the zoo. So every team was an animal. So we had Team Tiger and Team Panda and Team Koala. And in that way, the students got more excited and they made a drawing. So they really bonded. Because one of the important things when you're talking about teams is that you're able to connect to your other team members. And this is a very easy and funny way that get people engaged. And it also leads a little bit to a bit of a competition. So I think in our case, Team Tiger ultimately won the 2-day workshop. But it was fun because we all had small activities that we did. And for each activity, there were certain let's say, points to gain. And in the end, that relevant team won. Now, how did they gain those points, you might ask? Now, the points come in the third part of the team-based learning. So just to recap, first they do the individual test. Then they do the same questions as a team. Then we quickly go over those questions. And with quickly, I mean, okay, question 1, what does each team have? Now, let's say the majority had answer A, which was correct. Then we move to question 2. And there is a debate because, let's say, Team Tiger says it's A, and a lot of the other teams in the classroom say it's B. So we might have a quick discussion to see, why does Team Tiger think it's A? And why do other teams in the classroom think it's B? And then students learn from one another why B is the correct answer. So we do peer learning. Again, a very important component in team-based learning. The students give each other support and teach each other in a way on their views, how they have provided the argument, and to showcase their perspective. And that can be often even more powerful than the teacher providing all the content in front of the class with using the whiteboard or the blackboard. Because now students are talking to each other. And one thing that we as humans like to do is to help each other. We like to support one another. So when we're supporting each other, when we're students in the classroom, this is very satisfying. And it's nice to see that you could have helped your other teammate, and by explaining how you have answered that question, what your thoughts on it are. So that is the second step of team-based learning. So after that, the whole class is on the same page. We all have digested this content that we were asked to prepare in advance. And then we move to the actual exciting bit. Because for now, we just answer some multiple choice questions, right? Now let's get to the exciting bit of the team-based learning. This is also the longest part. This takes, let's say, about 75% to 80% of the actual session. So here is where we really want to dedicate our attention and focus to. And this is the problem-solving part. So here, each team is going to get the same problem. For instance, what can we say? For instance, if we're teaching a skill, which is our specialty in OTERMANS Institute, we could say, you are starting a company. You have your own startup, and you have this great product that you have. Now, how are you going to sell this to your customers in your area? That is, for instance, our problem. Now, each team in the class has the same problem. Now, you give the students a set number of time, maybe about 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, depends a bit on the level of the class and how much background knowledge they have. And they're going to brainstorm and just come up with ways that they think they could address this problem. After the 20 minutes is over, what we tend to do as OTERMANS Institute, and this is a slightly alternation of team-based learning, is each group of students then presents their idea back to the class. So we hear from all the groups in the class. Maybe there are 10 groups if we have about 50 students in a classroom. Of course, you can make the groups bigger if you have more than 50 in the classroom. That, I guess, depends a bit on your classroom size, but it's all very flexible and can easily be amended and adapted. And each group presents. Now, again, it's up to the team. Would they like to present, come in front of the classroom and speak about their project, about how they're going to sell this product? Or instead, they would like to, make a poster in those 20 minutes and make some, cool drawings of why they think their method is the best way? Or are they sort of giving a performance? This is, again, all part of the communication. So how are they going to communicate to their local neighbors to buy that product that we set in that example? It's up to them. We have not given them any borders, any guidelines. There's no frame. The only question is, how are you going to sell this product in your local neighborhood? So it's then up to the students to combine the knowledge they have had in the sessions you've had with them before, the reading they might have done, maybe any videos they have watched, any discussions they have had with each other and with you as the teacher, to come up with an innovative and creative way to solve the problem. So when using the approach like this, like team-based learning, students learn a lot of skills in these type of sessions. So they learn communication, not only with one another in the team, but also with an audience, because they have to present their solution somehow. So their communication skills, and if you would monitor this, and that is what we do at OTERMANS Institute with our sessions, we have certain, let's say, quick audits, quick questionnaires, as we call them, to determine the level of communication, of teamwork, and other different skill sets that the students are developing. We monitor this over time to see the progress of the students. You know, how is their communication at the beginning? And after done all the activities, how has this improved? What have they learned from it? So apart from communication, they also learn how to present. And as I said, presenting themselves as individuals, presenting themselves as a team, because when you go into the workplace, you will no doubtly work in a team, and maybe a big team, a smaller team, maybe an international team. There will be different people in a team. And I think each member of a team always has its own views, right? Its own perspectives. So this is what the students then learn as well, to deal with others, to work in a team, because they need to do this at work as well. It is difficult to replicate an actual work session in a job they might end up in, because there's so many different jobs that we can go into after our students' life, right? When we graduate, the world is our oyster, and there's lots of different things that people can do. But teamwork is teamwork. Whether this is in an IT company, in engineering, in marketing, even if you're a teacher, you know, we are all still working in a team. I am not the only academic at Barh University. I'm not the only person in OTERMANS Institute. No, I still very much work in a team. So it's really important that we teach that and the students can learn this skill, because this skill is not something you read up in a book. You know, I can send you lots of articles and lots of readings on teamwork, but I don't think you learn by that on you know what it is to be in a team. The only way you learn that is to practice it. Practice, 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 practice. And I think this is something we in OTERMANS Institute sort of can't stress enough. The only way you learn these skills, communication, presenting, teamwork, collaboration. I mean, there's a whole list, and I know Geert is going to talk about a little bit more after me about skills. But there's so many, but all of them you can only learn when you practice. And this might be difficult because we're already adapting to an online learning platform. And now we have to still develop our skills. And those skills are now going to be even more important. Because when you go to a job interview now, if it's online, you know, it is going to be a different setting. So practice this again. Practice it with your family. You sit in one room, your family or your friends sit in the other, and you practice this on Zoom. The way you practice when you're in the classroom, you now do it on Zoom or Skype or any other platform that you're using. Now, I think that is sort of enough said, I think, for now about team-based learning. I would like to move to flipped classroom approach, which is another type of approach that we can use. When we do a flipped classroom approach, it works slightly different. There is quite a bit of overlap between a lot of these educational methodologies. But in the strictest form, we can see that flipped classroom, the students, the situation is flipped, as the word says. We switch the role. Now, what this means is the teacher becomes a student and the student becomes a teacher. So when we're doing flipped classroom, what we tend to do at OTERMANS Institute, and to a certain extent also universities in the UK, for instance, students are given a chapter to read again in a book or video to watch, and we're not doing a test on it like we do in the team-based learning. That's not taking place at the moment. No, now we are holding an immediate discussion. So we can do this in many different formats, and the format is really up to you to choose what works best with your students and what you feel most comfortable with as well. In a lot of these methods, there's not a real right or wrong approach. You have to adapt it to how you see fit and what works with your students, because all students are different. And it also depends on what topic you're teaching. Some methods are more suitable, are more useful, or easier to do with certain topics than others. So back to flipped classroom. In the flipped classroom approach, the students have studied something beforehand, and then they showcase that to the other students in the class. So they trigger the discussions. They lead the session. Then, I mean, they're not the teacher, no, but they will present how they have found this topic. So they showcase to the others their skills, their knowledge on this, and that will then trigger a discussion. Because they are not the only ones who read it or watched the video. All students in the class prepared. And this will then lead to a discussion where, again, we all learn from one another. And the word peer support, or the term peer support, is really, really crucial. That is almost the pinnacle that keeps it all together. We need to be open to listen to each other's views and learn from one another. Because only then also we develop ourselves and we support each other in our learning. Now, one way, I saw there was a question earlier on the chat about learning analytics. And learning analytics is really useful. And I think if there is a benefit to online learning or to this pandemic, it would be learning analytics. When we have students in our classroom, yes, we can pass an attendance sheet around. I don't know if you do that. We do that at least. We have an attendance sheet and students sign in, right? They give their name and we have a student number. So each student has a number and they put their number there. So we can see, we see about 45 people in the classroom and we also have 45 on our sheet. So, you know, that is our attendance sheet. Now, when we are in an online learning, we can more easily track what people have done. So if, for instance, we develop a quiz and we launch the quiz, we can then track which students have done the quiz. How long did it take them to do the quiz? Which questions did they answer? Which question did they not answer? What have they wrong? And everything is given to us in, I don't know, in a second. Because we don't have to go through all the paperwork. Everything is done digitally. And these numbers are all given to us sort of beforehand. Now, when we're using, and I think quizzes is a very effective way to sort of monitor your students' progress over time, you can also see which are the concepts the students struggle with the most. You know, which questions did they all have wrong, for instance? And then you spend more time in the next session on that topic to make sure that everyone now understands that concept. And how do you track your students' performance? You use these formative assessments. Now, quick intro on the difference between a formative and a summative assessment, for those who might not be aware of this. A formative assessment is an assessment where you assess the student's knowledge on a topic, but they do not get a grade, and it doesn't count towards that subject. So maybe a quiz, or they have to write maybe a 50-word synopsis or a summary of the chapter of the textbook. Now, when it's summative, they might have a similar test, but now they get a grade. You know, they might get a 70%, and that counts towards the grade of that subject. So we add all the summative pieces together, and that forms the average grade you get for your module, for your subject, for your course. Formative is mainly to test whether you understood the knowledge. And as a student, a formative assessment is so useful. I keep telling my students all the time, yes, you don't get a grade for it. Yes, it's not going to count towards your module, but the best opportunity you can take with a formative assessment is you get feedback. You get feedback on what you did well, which is really important to know, so you can keep doing that and keep building on that strength that you already have. But you'll also get feedback on areas that you can improve. And of course, that's what you really want to know, right? You want to know how can you become better, so that when you have to submit it for an actual grade, you do get that grade you wanted. What you really desire, because you have worked hard for that. So there are certain things as well that is a bit more difficult to do online, especially for teachers and students that are in the science areas. where we have a lab, and maybe let's say chemistry. I think that is a very typical example. You know, we go into the lab and we practice the chemical equations that we have done in the class, right? We're looking at how does this molecule react to that molecule. And we know in theory how it works because we practice it in the class and we, helped each other understand the concept. But now we really want to see how that works in real life, right? Because that is, I think, the fun of chemistry and science. We actually, we're practicing with things real life in the classroom. Now, I think doing an experiment online is a bit more tricky. There's a lot of software being developed to support us with that. But I think, playing around with molecules and stuff in an actual lab is much more fun than having an animated video or another type of video shown to you. So I think there will always be a mixture of online learning and in-classroom learning, because some things are also more exciting to do outside, especially when it comes to labs and practical work. Now, of course, it's not only more fun for practicalities, but it's also there is discussions. When you're in the classroom, it's sometimes easier to flip things around, to move from one thing to the other. We can almost mimic everything we do in a classroom. We can use a whiteboard in Zoom. We can all write on it. We can raise our hands and ask questions. We can use the chat function to put our thoughts. We can record it. We can listen to it as many times as we want. If we're in a classroom, if I miss something, it's not recorded. So, I really have to pay attention. When it's online, I can keep reviewing and reviewing as such. So I think there's definitely pros and cons to using online learning. But I think moving to only online learning, we will miss out a key component. And as I said, not only lab and practical work, but also the human interaction. Being with each other, maybe working on the same piece of paper, making quick drawings, discussing something really face-to-face, using body language much more. Because nowadays, if we all sit in front of the computer, but a body language is something that is more difficult to showcase via an online platform than when it is in the classroom. And the same works with different groups. When you have different groups in the classroom, it's really much more sort of coordinated when it comes to online learning. We have to put each other in breakout rooms, and then every breakout room then has to report. There's a little bit of a less dynamic in there when it's online. Again, everything is almost possible. It's just a different experience. And a student experience is really important when it comes to their learning. If we make it as interactive as possible, students will be more able to not only memorize what you said to them, but later on, finding it easier to also apply that knowledge. Because they are practicing already with it when we are interactive. So I don't think you can really keep, online learning as one thing and offline or in session in a classroom. They are still two separate things, but slowly they're more and more blending together. And I think that is going to be key for the future of education. We're really going to keep this mixture of classroom teaching as well as online. And what I would argue is that we keep the classroom sessions really for these interactions, where we work in a team, where we look at solutions, where we give presentations, where we use communication skills, and many, many more. Now, one thing what I like to use in my teaching, and I know a lot of universities in the UK use a similar approach, is tutorials. Now, what do I mean with tutorial? Because I think a lot of people use the word tutorial in a different way. And that's something we all start to learn now when we move to online learning. What you call a workshop might not be the same as what I call a workshop. So what we need to do as institutions, as staff members, is come up with a terminology that we adapt as an institution. Now, this can be as an institution solely. It can be in a state, in a country even. I guess that is not up to me to decide. But it's definitely important that as an institution, you use a terminology. So for instance, I use the term tutorial for a guided approach on how to do something. Now, what I mean by that is for instance, let's use maths or statistics as an example for this. I think that leads itself quite nicely. Going over how to do something, how to calculate a certain problem, how to come to the solution is often a step-by-step process, right? You not just have the answer to any mathematical equation, it doesn't just come to you. You're using certain steps to come to the answer. Now, what I could provide as a teacher is a step-by-step video that I can show to my students on how to solve this problem. So they also have this material outside the classroom. And the same can be done with many of the science subjects where we often do something step by step, which is easily turned into a video where I showcase with my screen what are the things maybe I clicked on when we're talking about doing some analysis, maybe of any data you have gathered. Now, how do I analyze that? I showcase step by step, almost like what a lot of people do. They Google it, some YouTube link comes up, and that's what they use. And I would definitely advise the students not to just Google something, how to do this or how to do that. Always rely on the information your teachers have provided you, because we know that information is reliable. It's trustworthy, in other words. What they have said, those steps are, are the correct ones. They give you support. And there's a lot of information nowadays on the web, which is nice. We can find something quite quickly if it's a fact and we forgot something. But on the other hand, it's also a bit of a chaos. It's a sea of information. And as a student, it's difficult to navigate through that sea and to find the information that you really need. Because you don't want to study for your exam or for your essay or for your coursework and have relied on YouTube sources and, actually they were wrong. So please, as students, always listen to the sources and use the sources your teachers provided you. Because, they want you to succeed in your course. They want you to succeed in your exam. Now, when the pandemic hit me a few months ago in the UK, as I said, we had to move to online teaching because our lockdown was announced on the 23rd of March, Monday the 23rd, and we had still a few weeks of teaching left. So we immediately had to transform our lectures into online interactive sessions. A lot of Q&A, which is, I think, another thing we tend to use more when we're doing online learning, is question and answer sessions, where students can either come in a group like this. I would maybe not use 200 people in one group, but in smaller groups, maybe of 30 to 40. And you can even make it smaller if you have more time, because the more groups you make, the more time you need to set aside to give your attention to each group. And then the students could just ask questions and I would just give the answer, or not the correct answer for the exam, but I would give them the guidance so that they could come either up with the answer themselves, or I provided them the resources so that they would be able to give the answer to the exam, which took place about a month later. Which brings me nicely to my next topic, which is exams. In the UK, and I believe in India it's the same, exams take place in a big hall or in a lecture in the classroom. And we as students, we come to the classroom, we have our pen and paper, or maybe just our pen, and the questions come and we start to write down our notes, right? We're scribbling and scribbling for hours and hours, and that's our result. And that's what the teacher will then correct. Now, in the situation of COVID-19, we cannot come to the big room anymore and all sit in a room and do our exams. So we have to make them online. And that is a big challenge. How can we avoid collusion online? Collusion is when students work together to get the answer, because that's not fair. Everybody has to do the test themselves. How can we make sure collusion doesn't happen? People don't cheat. In a big room where all my students sit in a room, I can see if they talk to each other, and I can say, oh, you're talking to each other, be quiet. You have to do the test by yourself. But online, I can't see. I don't know what they do. I am not in the same room as they are. They might even talk to their parents and say, Daddy, do you know the answer to this question? And if you not know they're taking an exam, then they might, you might just have provided the answer to your child. And Well, yeah, maybe they got a big grade, but again, it's important that we all assess the individual students' capabilities. So this is a big challenge for teachers, because we have to redesign our questions. And that is a challenge, because they have to really rely much more on critical thinking. Now, maybe that's a good thing, because critical thinking is one of the key skills that you need to develop as a student whilst you're at school or university. When you apply, critical thinking can be applied in any type of setting, in any type of job. You need to use critical thinking, which is also really closely linked to problem solving or solution-based thinking. There are many different terminologies being used. So we now as teachers have to increase our own critical thinking to come up with more challenging questions that the students can't just put on Google and provide the answer in the online exam. No, they really have to be innovative and creative in their answers. So that might be a slightly good thing, is that we have to develop these now a bit more forcefully. So we're not recalling the answers to the exam. I'm not just reading a textbook and then providing you with the information. No, I have to almost reiterate all that knowledge into something that can then apply. So even from the moment you start studying for your exam as a student, you need to think, okay, this is chapter 1. It is about X, Y, and Z. Now, how can I turn this into something that I can apply that? What can I do with this knowledge? So when you study, always ask yourself this: why is this information important? And what can I do with it? When you be able to answer those two questions when you're studying, I hope you're going to do well on the exam. But again, it's going to be a challenge and a different way of learning. Now, briefly want to touch on research before I finish my part. And I think this may be a bit more for the staff, but also for the students who are working on research projects. I think research is a big part of our academic life, right? We teach and we also do research. Now, research in an online environment is tricky. It's difficult. It's challenging. But it is not impossible. We need to adapt even more drastically than when we teach. And especially for people in science, doing research online is actually almost impossible. You cannot recreate your whole chemistry lab or your physics lab or at home, right? I don't think that is safe in the first place, let alone the environment you need to create. So in those subjects, we almost cannot go to online research. Now, when we're in the social sciences, in arts, in literature, in psychology, in marketing, economics and finance, and business, it is a bit easier. It's still difficult, but it's a little bit easier, because there's been a lot of software developed where we can redesign maybe our market research, our experiments in an online environment. But again, we need to train ourselves to be able to use that software, to use those techniques. And that takes a bit of time. So we all need to invest in ourselves as well. We need to give ourselves time to research what is the best method to do my research now. So we have to do research on our research in order to do our actual research. So what I mean, for instance, I do focus groups as part of my research. It's one of the ways I collect data. Now, when you do a focus group, you sit maybe with 6 to 8 people in a room and you have a discussion on a topic. Again, this is slightly more difficult when you move to online, because people might sort of speak on top of each other, body language isn't there. It's all going to be a bit more tricky, and it's also a bit uncomfortable to speak online. There is this feeling of, this is a bit weird, this is a bit odd. That's something we all are learning and adapting to. And experiments is even more tricky. With a lot of the things you can do online with experiments, it's not the same accuracy as you get when you do it in your lab. There is a delay in time, perhaps, with the streaming online. So this is something we really have to think about when we design our experiments. How can we ensure accuracy Also, how can we keep the data confidential? Because we need to be in line with government laws and regulation. So this is something we all need to really think about when we're moving our research online. And for some, it just won't really be possible because we need to make sure the results we get are reliable, trustworthy, and they have high validity and internal consistency. So I think that's why I want to leave it with the research part, because I think that's much more tricky than everything else. I would like to thank you all for your attention. I saw some nice comments in the chat. Thank you very much for that. I don't think I already addressed all the points in the chat, but I'm happy to have a discussion as well afterwards and address any other questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Paul D, for this thought-provoking session on various aspects of education. Blended learning is really an exciting opportunity to evolve for a teaching, serving the purpose of education is the challenging aspect. Now, I would, before moving on to the question and answer session, I would like to have a few questions. Comment on really very important aspects that has been troubling while we are moving on to this online teaching. There are some aspects of teaching, and I mean, people and parents try to expect so many things. So, create some
क्या
problem.
मोबाइल पे क्या चाहिए
Point
फालतू काम नहीं करता है
the online teaching, how we could manage all this. Hello.
Sir, we are having a bit of difficulty hearing you. There's mic error. There's a distance.
Yeah, I could understand your problem. There was certain problem. There are certain technical glitch. I think you all have understood what Amar has said. And now it's over to our question answer session. If you have any question, you can easily raise your question. If you have questions for Pauline, you can raise your question. क्या प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है
Already, maybe you can ask yourself a question to warm up this round.
on karo. Yeah, you can answer the question from your chat box. Already, I think it will be. सबको mute करो. सबको mute करो. Already, it will be better if
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
There is one question from
Yes,
YouTube.
please, go for it.
Okay, to Paul D. It is by Koina Ghosh. She is asking a question to Paul D. Social research demands extensive fieldwork. How it's possible now? Ma'am, please highlight on this issue.
Thank you very much for your question. That is a really important but also tricky one. Fieldwork is something that we really can't do online, right? Unless we can make use of simulation software, where we can use simulations and satellites, views and images to, as much as possible, recreate the field trip that we were supposed to do. Now, virtual reality is something that can be used in these settings, but is still very much a developing field as well. Virtual reality slowly is starting its move into education, but I personally think this is maybe going to take a little bit more time before these virtual reality platforms are fully suited to do actual field trips. Now, I think as soon as social distancing measures are slightly released, or as soon as we can actually, all go out in the new normal way, as people tend to call it, we could do field trips in smaller groups of students. But again, as we all know, when we're going to smaller groups, we have to replicate this session many, many more times. So this also depends a little bit on your time available, your personal time, and the resources you have. Is it, for instance, possible to split the class? Maybe, let's say you do a field trip normally with the whole class as a whole, as all the students together. Is it possible to do it maybe 5 times that week and split the class into 5 groups? Now, there is often financial constraints and time constraints to this, but we need to see maybe how we can make it happen. One way I know that some academics try to at least put a little bit of the field trip is they maybe as an academic, they do the field trip themselves and video it, and then showcase a lot of the concepts, the insights the students would learn from a field trip via video. But it's never going to be the same as if you think as if doing the actual field trip yourself. So I think when we slowly move to the new social distancing measures, and in the UK there are talks about moving it to 1 meter, I don't know what the social distancing rules will be in a few months' time. I think we all are just eagerly waiting on and seeing how this is going to evolve. I think working in smaller groups and going with smaller groups of students will be probably the solution we have to think about for the moment, until we can make much more use of technology like virtual reality or simulations.
Okay. There is one more question. Two questions on the same point.
One thing. We cannot take more than 5-6 questions because we are running short of time.
This is the last question. Sum up of the 2 questions on a common point.
Exactly. Good.
People want to know what is actually a flipped classroom. It has any relation with the blended learning? It's totally different, or any correlation between blended learning and flipped classroom? And second question is how learning analytics can be support formative assessment.
Second question is more relevant. Blended learning is not the flipped class is not related to blended learning, I think. But better you ask the person.
It's for Paul D.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Please carry on.
Thank you very much for that question. If I address the first question first, flipped classroom and blended learning are 2 different things. So when we use blended learning, we could use flipped classroom as part of that. So blended learning means we use different types of learning and learning platforms and learning ways, educational ways, to develop our teaching and learning. So flipped classroom can be used as part of blended learning. So in blended learning, we often tend to mix online learning with actual interactive sessions. So the flipped classroom approach can be the interactive part of the blended learning that we're providing. So in the flipped classroom, students prepare something beforehand. This can be done individually or as a group. It depends a bit on, again, on your classroom size and the time you have available. I would probably suggest they do this in groups. And then they present it back to the class the next session. Now, the nice thing about this is they will have studied the material and sort of present this back in their own words. So as the teacher, you can really see what the students have picked up from the assignment, from the task you set them to do, and where are the gaps. And those gaps you address then in the session. So the key part of the flipped classroom is that the students present it back to each other. It's not the teacher telling all the information and giving a lecture. No, it's much more peer-based learning where students learn from one another. You have flipped the room in a way. The students present the information that will trigger a discussion. I hope that gives you a bit of a better idea on the flipped classroom approach.
Yeah, exactly. Bipin, any more questions? Bipin?
I think there was a second question on
second question.
Yeah.
learning
I can
analytics.
repeat. How
Yes, please.
I can repeat. How learning analytics can be support formative assessment.
Yes, thank you.
इसके बाद मजा आ जाता है.
So, formative assessment, as I explained, is not graded as such that it counts towards your final grade that will come on your certificate, on your diploma, but it's something that can be used and should be used to develop, to keep on improving yourself as a student. And formative assessments are really useful for the students to see what they know really well and what they should improve on, what they can do better, so they can identify their own strengths and weaknesses. Now, where learning analytics come into play is that you as the teacher, you can see the progress of all your students. So there's no hiding here. You have everything is visible of everyone. So you can see, and I think a quiz is often an easy example to use in this case. So as the teacher, you have set them a quiz to do online in a certain time frame. Maybe so you say before next class, you need to have done this quiz. Now, of course, you need to trust that the students are doing the quiz by themselves. And I think that is, of course, the tricky bit, because in an online world where we all are at home, Google is at our fingertips, as well as other people who might be older, more experienced than us. But I think that is up to the student. That is the student's responsibility. They are responsible for their own learning. So it's up to the student to make this a fair and honest process. And don't collude, as the term we use in the UK, collusion with one another. So the students participate in the quiz, and you as a teacher on whatever sort of platform you're using, it works on any technology platform, you can see, maybe only 50% of your students have done the test. But out of those 50, you saw that they all had question 1, 2, 3, and 4 correct. They all knew that. So you as a teacher don't need to really spend much time on these topics that were addressed in question 1, 2, 3, 4. But question 5, you notice, is the tricky one. Only 4 or 5 students had this correct, maybe a small percentage of all the students. So you can then see that this is an area that they struggle with. And it's your responsibility then as the teacher to improve that and, address, maybe use more resources, make a quick video on this, maybe have a question and answer session with the students to see, what do they not understand with question 5? What do they find difficult? And then interact with the students to see how you can help them as the teacher. How can you support them? So that makes sure if you would do the test again, we all know the answer to question 5. And we don't just know it's answer B. No, we can argue why it's answer B. We understand what it is about. So in that way, you use analytics to track the progress of your students over time. And what you could do, but this is more of an advanced formative assessment learner analytics, is to track in a way that you give students similar tests at similar time points to see if they still understand the learning, and you can then track it in a curve as such. You can keep track of where they are and if they still understood it at the beginning as well. So learning analytics is a great tool for you as a teacher as well as for the student. So there's a benefit for both, and I think that is the key part of analytics. Both the student and the staff can track their own learning. I hope that answered your question. I'm happy to take any more, but Also conscious of time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is the last question from the coordinator himself. That will be the last question. Amar, you better ask your question.
Dr. Poldy, you have a vast experience working in these rural areas and different countries. Now, as we move on this to online teaching, uh, we have seen a societal, there is a problem in the social structure where girls are not given that much opportunity. And when this online teaching is happening, people are working from their homes, or the online teaching learning is happening from the home itself. Now, girls are not able to do more. I mean, because they are supposed to do the home course and they are supposed to do so many things, and boys are not expected to do. Have you seen these type of things, and if you've seen how we are tackling these things, how we are suggesting these things to the different areas where you visit? Because as I see from your website, that you have a vast experience in countries where such societal difference exists. I would like to, I request you to, hello. Polly, are you getting my question?
I have a bit of difficulty hearing you. There's a lot of echo and noise on it. Could someone maybe reiterate the question or put it in the chat?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think it will be better if we move to our new another speaker, because time is we are really getting out of our time. So we are going to the next speaker. Please, yeah, please ask Susovan. Susovan. Where are you, Susovan? Where are you?
Yes, please start the video. Actually, someone switch off.
Yeah. Susovan.
Kindly introduce the second speaker, Gerard.
Video disabled from the host, I think.
No, you are audible. Don't bother for the video. We are not interested in you having your face. We are only interested in having your voice.
Okay. Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to all the viewers and the participants. It's a great pleasure for me to invite our second speaker, Mr. Jensen, for today's international webinar on coping with higher education, research, and employability during and after the pandemic. Before I hand over the mic to Mr. Jensen, let me introduce him first. Mr. Jensen obtained his bachelor's in science on automotive design and management from Netherlands and received his master's in science from London. During his PhD at Brunel University, London, he became the specialist in renewable energy and has written substantial papers on the topic. Solar Botanic, a specialized renewable energy company, appointed him as a chief product officer. Regarding his achievement, he is the recipient of Global Leader Summit Award along with Mr. Dev Aditya for their work at OTERMANS Institute. Known for his expertise on the current issues, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Gerard Jensen to deliver his valuable lecture. Mr. Jensen. Hello.
Thank you for that nice introduction. And it's great to see so many of you tuning in today to give us the chance to talk with you. Yeah, thanks for introducing already myself. So I wanted just to say how I got involved with OTERMANS Institute and started working on developing this curriculum of skills that are needed in today's workplace. When I finished university myself and started to work, it was a bit of a shock to me how different the workplace was from what I learned in university. This was mainly because there are so much more people that you have to work with, people that demand things of you, set deadlines for you that you don't anticipate. And I saw my experienced colleagues could handle this easily. They could plan their time, they could talk with confidence to people and send out reports that they didn't get emails back with hundreds of questions to explain what they meant with it. Excuse me. So it was very hard for me to see and to become aware that I was missing a particular skill set that was needed in the workplace. And luckily, I had the chance to develop these skills during school and learn how to practice these skills so that I could catch up with my colleagues later on. In school, for example, we started at 9 years old when I had to give my first presentation. And this was really scary, of course. I barely could talk and I was just staring in the distance when I was speaking. But doing these things in a comfortable environment with your classmates on a topic that you're knowledgeable of, whether that is football, cars, maybe airplanes flying around, makes it easier to talk about it and gain confidence that you can give a public presentation to all these people. And this has helped a lot of my classmates as well, becoming more comfortable in doing these things. And often these kind of presentations, especially later on in higher education, high school and university, this was much more focused on problem-solving skills as well. So we had to solve a problem and present the outcome of that to the class or to a group of lecturers, and we get assessed on how well we actually know it. So that became multiple learnings into one exercise. And especially during university times, this was all group work based. So we would work in a team of 8 to 10 people, and for a whole semester, and switching different roles in the team. But everybody had to do their part, had to learn the same things, had to support each other in helping them. Like Paulie was explaining as well about peer-based learning. And this was always really challenging as well, because you always have to get out of your comfort zone to learn these new things and get better at it. But slowly and over time, you see that you're improving and improving. And that is the way to learn this, is to practice it regularly, look at how you are performing yourself and see how you can improve yourself and implement it for the next time you have to do it again, so that you get a whole loop of doing, feedback, learning, doing better. This is the main difference that I have seen as well during my trips throughout India, visiting different high schools, universities, and elementary schools, and seeing how they work compared to what I've seen here in Europe and the USA and what I've experienced myself in these times. We are a lot more working outside of the class, the standard classroom, but being put into teams to work on a particular project. And the classroom is more there to support you in your teamwork, to give you the knowledge that you will need to handle that project successfully. Teamwork is stretched on so much, because in every single job that you will find, you will have to work with other people. If you're selling a product, you will have to talk with your clients. You have to talk with your suppliers who give you the input to that product. You will have to perform marketing so that people know about your product. You have to talk with your colleagues that will give you information so you can advise your clients again. So this is all very important. And if in teamwork, you have to rely on trust with each other. So if somebody puts a deadline for you that you cannot cope with, you have to have the courage and confidence to say to them, I cannot do it before this time. Give me a day more and you get good work, and then they can be happy as well. But if you ignore that and say, oh yeah, I'll get it done, and you come with some work that is not up to the standard, you are not helping them and you have just wasted a day of your own time. So this communication and teamwork and relying on each other is very important in the workplace. And it is something that I think higher education in India can put a lot more effort in to preparing students to do that and have an easier transition into the working place afterwards. Especially with the working place at the moment transitioning to more service-based jobs. There's even more interaction with the people at different with different levels in society and skill sets, understanding and backgrounds that you all need to take into account when you communicate with them. These are kind of the things that higher education can do, but they also can do this in a more organized way, where, for example, as I explained, what we do here in Europe for me worked really good, that we were put into a team of 8 people for a whole semester to solve a problem, and the team gets one team leader, and he or she is solely responsible to give direction to the project, organize the meetings, make sure everything goes according to plan, and adjust the plan if needed. Then there is a note taker that with every meeting takes the notes and distributes them between the team members so that everybody is aware of what is expected from them, what are they going to do, when are they going to finish it, so that team members from each other know when they can expect certain things and keep it smooth and aligned with each other. And the different part of the roles are then filled in depending on what kind of problem you are solving and what are the different skill sets of each people in that group. And that is a big part for the group leader as well, to determine who is doing what and when. And what we did then is, for the next semester, the next project, these roles will switch around so that everybody has the chance to be a group leader. If you are too shy to talk in a meeting, for example, and you are forced to be the group leader, you will have to talk. You will practice this and you will get more comfortable and confident when talking. And it's not a overnight change that you make. So that's the way, if you do this over a semester or multiple semesters, multiple years, you have the chance to actually take these small steps and slowly grow and develop these skills. This is also a lot with creativity, a lot involved in creativity as well. If you are in such a team, you have ideas from people with different backgrounds. So they will look at a problem differently, and you can ideate together different solutions and choose the best thing from that, and maybe combine different solutions and find an even better solution from that. So you can create a lot of creative activities around a team-based project to improve the learning opportunities for the students as well. What helped me a lot personally during university time was that every beginning of the year we had to make a personal development plan for ourselves. We had to look at what do we want to learn this year and how can we learn this, and discuss this with our tutor, and regularly meet with them to see how is the progress into developing yourself that way, so that you actually are aware of why you are performing certain tasks that you maybe don't want to do. And you think, I want to get better at time management, but I don't want to make a whole planning. But now you have to make that planning because you want to increase your skill. And it becomes fun to do it because you know, if I make this planning, I will become better and I will have more time left over to do fun things after work. I won't get overwhelmed with all the different things from my colleagues that are coming at me at times that I don't know when to do it. I think this will become more and more and more important in the coming weeks and months even already. As I said already, more and more jobs are getting service-based now, and agricultural jobs are decreasing, and more jobs you will have the demand that you talk with people and have a skill set outside of what you would think is necessary to perform a certain technical job, for example. Especially in times now, I saw that COVID is making this impact even bigger, and especially in India, I read the research that 50% of the Indian startups have less than 3 months cash available to survive this period. So a lot of these companies might go extinct in the next weeks or months, which means that there is people working there now which will lose their job and will have to look for new jobs that are less available, of course. There's less jobs available, more people looking for jobs. So this makes it critical that you are able to stand out from the crowd and have certain skills that you can demonstrate that other people don't have. Especially for students nowadays, it is important because if you are looking for a job, you will see that a lot of jobs demand that you have experience already. But if you come out of university, you don't have that experience yet. So you will need to show that you can bring value to that position in another way that is maybe more important than the experience, and you can build that experience in the role later on. This also means that when applying for the job that you want, you already have to think about these kind of things. How can I stand out from the people, from the crowd? Which skills do I need to show off? Which skills do I need to develop? And it is therefore important to start, if you can, this afternoon already, by taking a piece of paper and write down what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. This doesn't need to be a complete list directly. If you think you want to write down all your strengths and all your weaknesses in an hour, you will block and you will think, oh, I never can get that to work. I have to think about so many. So that is when you leave your list open, leave it there on the table for the next week or 2 weeks. And during the week when you're performing activities, you will find out, maybe I should get better in organizing this particular points. Maybe I have to communicate better with these kind of people. And you can add that to the list. And when you are starting to see particular strengths and weaknesses for yourself, you can use these strengths with confidence to help others. And you can work on your weaknesses, and you can set out a plan to develop these weaknesses into strengths later on. And this is also important that you look at the job market already when you're doing that, because you already might have an idea of the kind of job that you want, or a dream job that you need to have, otherwise you won't be happy. And then you can already look, what are the kind of skills that are required for me to succeed at that job? And you can see how this links up with your strengths and weaknesses and where you have to develop on them. Now, developing these skills, as I said, it doesn't go overnight. And as Pauli said as well, practice, practice, practice is key to this. So you need to be patient with this and set the right goals in developing the skills. And if you set these goals, you have to be very specific in what you want to achieve. A technique that we use for goal setting is SMART goals, which is an acronym which means specific, measurable, acceptable, realistic, and time-based. What this means is that you not just put out a goal there that says, I want to get a good grade this year, because you don't know what is a good grade, where do you want to get a good grade in, how are you going to get that good grade? It's not a goal, it's more a wish, not more than that. So if you can make that goal specific, which grade do you want to have good? I want to have a good grade in biology, for example. And you make it measurable. When do you know that you have reached that goal? When do you know that you have to keep working harder to reach that goal? If you say, I want to get at least 90% in my biology exam at the end of this year, you already make it time bound as well, because there is a time. At the end of this year, during that exam period, I want to have 90% mark in biology. So by then I need to know these things to get there. But you also have to look at yourself. Is this acceptable to expect this from me? Can I make the sacrifices to study so much biology? Or does that mean that I have to leave out cricket practice that I also want to perform good at? Or do I have to spend more time on mathematics because I'm suffering a bit with that and I need to get at least 70% there? Maybe it's better to put an 80% goal for biology so that my other goals don't suffer. This is all about how is this acceptable and realistic to achieve in your own life, the goals that you want to achieve. And maybe you have to say, this year I'm going for 80%, next year I will reach at 90% because I will be more capable of doing that. If you set these goals properly, it can be really, really encouraging for yourself and to keep yourself growing and to keep track of your growth, that you see yourself actually developing and getting better, which is important. Because if you don't see yourself getting better, you will think, why do all this effort? And you will stop doing that. It is also important that when you set a goal, you don't set it too high or too low. If you set it too low and it's too easy, you won't be encouraged to give it your all. But if you set it too high, you will feel discouraged because it's too difficult and you will get to that point that you're like, how do I get there? I cannot get there anymore. And you will give up as well. So especially in the beginning, when you start setting these goals, it is important to stay flexible and play with this a bit. If I set this goal, I cannot reach it. So I need to adjust it, slightly lower goal that I can reach. And then from there, step onto that goal that I actually wanted to reach. If you can keep practicing these skills and also with your peers discuss how to develop these skills and maybe encourage each other and talk with each other weekly. What skills are you working on? How is it going? Oh, maybe I've learned this as well. This is how I did it. You should try that. And I'm developing these skills. I know you are good at that. Can you give me some advice? Then you can help each other grow, and it becomes kind of an accumulated growth process that everybody involved and around you can enjoy, and everybody will see that you become a better person for it, and the people around will become better persons, and you will enjoy that as well. These are kind of the skills that are really important to start developing now, and especially now you have the time sitting at home, to look into how good are you at, for example, time management. Do you struggle to find time to do things, or do you have a lot of time left over that you are, how do I fill this up? Maybe project management skills. How do you solve a particular problem of making yourself a breakfast? How much time does it take to perform each step? What resources are needed? Which ingredients do you put into your breakfast? Is this all available to me? Or do I need to go to the shop to buy it first? So you can plan that you have a smooth breakfast, that you don't waste time there. You can start looking at things around you and find creative uses for them. You can use a broken cup of coffee and use this as a plant pot, for example, instead of throwing it away, and decorate it and use small bits of creativity like this to slowly and step by step create your own creativity and perform better at this, so that if you go into the job place and you get all of a sudden a big problem in front of you, that you know which knowledge to tap into to solve this in an easy and nice way. These kind of skills we have also put online during the lockdown for people to learn them, and with our initiative that you can find at oiedu.co.uk/lessons for humanity, where you can see an overview of a glimpse overview of what kind of topics that we train in our regular curriculum, but also give you an idea of what kind of skills can you develop already now from where you are, with some tips and exercises to develop them, so that you can start getting better for the workplace or your next school year that you are starting. If you keep working on them daily and don't give up, don't get discouraged if there is a difficult moment. If you think today is a bad day, keep going at it, because you will see if you keep at it that you will grow step by step, and it will be easy and quick progress, much more easy and quicker than you would expect. And you will be much more successful in your future job. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerard, for your insightful and wonderful session on this employability issue with COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to take on one of the session because we are running short of time. So, is there any question?
पता करो ना अगर
Kindly come forward.
Is there any questions from participant sides?
So we should now move on and again request Dr. Hina to introduce जैसे आप
now we are reaching the last leg of this session, and we have with us Mr. Dev Aditya. Dev Aditya too has completed his LLB from the Brunel University. He was the first non-European to become a deputy president of the Students' Union. They gave up the flourished legal career to concentrate on social change making and impact work. He has also raised over 5 lakh European, 5 crore Indian rupees equivalent for several charitable trusts. Dave also has a first-hand experience in working with many members of the House of Lords and the current Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson. He is integral element of the Artemis Institute. Thank you. It's over to Dave.
Thank you, ma'am, for the lovely introduction, and thank you once again to the college, to Professor Binod Jha for inviting us, and to the faculty. We are extremely privileged to be here today, and we were really, really excited to see the number of people registering for this and for so much of interest to be generated. So thank you once again, and here is my attempt to quench your thirst with some new information. And how we have structured this talk today is for Paul D to have given more theories, with Gerard to have talked more about the employment aspect. And now I'm going to bridge what they have talked about with the practicalities of the East and the West, and how I can see that there can be a marriage between the two, and how certain things that are practiced in the West can also be done in the East. And we all know that there is sometimes a problem of funding or resources, and I will try my best to also answer these questions so that that limitation does not become a barrier, especially during the COVID-19 time and the time that comes straight after this in the so-called new normal. So for me, I would like to start my piece for you today with the word foundation. Now, foundation is a very important and powerful word. We as a society, as an institution, be it the East, be it the West, be it in Europe, be it in America, be it a state in India like Bengal or Bihar, or the other side of India, which is Kerala or Maharashtra, it does not matter. What matters is that foundation on its own is something that is basic for everybody. And I think personally that one of the very big, and I beg your pardon for using this word, one of the very big mistakes that people are doing and institutions are doing across the globe, even in the West, even in the East, even in the Arab countries, is they are actually reacting to what is happening during the pandemic. And the moment you are reacting to something, you are letting go of your foundations. You're not thinking about foundations. You are trying to put a band-aid on a hurt that you have just got. Now, without foundation, this is not going to be a long-term solution. It is not a cure. If you are actually thinking about the people who are infected by the virus right now, reacting to this situation is like giving them oxygen. It is not giving them the antivirus or the drug that will not allow this virus to touch them ever again or to cure them completely. Now, why I'm talking about foundation is because that is very, very important, not only for the higher education academic section, but also for the employment section and also for the research section. This is because, and this I'm basing from my own personal experience of traveling and teaching and interacting with universities, colleges, and schools across 3,000 kilometers by road in India, that a lot of institutions often try to change and learn from new things without linking it back to their own heritage and foundation. That's number one. And number two is there is a disconnect with the foundation altogether. Now, let me tell you a small story about this. So I have a very good friend, and he is a friend from my school days, so a long time back. His name is Tushar, and he is a very bright student, scholar, and he's but a literary genius. So he has been studying media in Mumbai, and he was having some problem getting through to the media companies. And then we had a chat, and then I went to Mumbai to basically talk to him. And what we found out was there was a foundational problem in training provided. Not his fault, not the student's fault, maybe not even the institution's fault. It is a fault of the mindset. And this foundational issue was that professional development as such was not really given a lot of importance. This is very important. You might be a scholar. Okay, you might be a gold medalist and you get a job. But what happens to all the other students? You need professional development. Now, sometimes in universities, colleges, and even schools, especially in India, I have seen they have some development programs. For instance, I know for a fact when he was studying media and mass communication, he did go to a number of exhibitions and to talk to existing journalists, etc. And that's good. That's good to increase your academic knowledge and to increase your exposure. But what I'm talking about professional development as such is how do I make my application solid? How do I make myself more visible online? Why should somebody hire me despite my degree? And all of you are very learned people and probably more experienced than me in the Indian scenario. And you just know how these marks and rankings are going up. Back in my time, getting an 85 in humanities was a great thing. Now, even that has reached a 98 and a 99, which I personally find funny. But let's not go down that track and let's just come back to my topic. So if there are today hundreds of people who are getting 99s and 98s and whatever else that there may be before joining HE and while in HE, why do you think a company should hire you simply based on your marks? Foundation is key. And I think firstly for students, they really need to go out there and look for that foundation. Not go out there and go to coaching centers. No, because that's again pointing you just towards those marks. And just think about it. You are running for marks that other people are already getting. You are not making yourself unique. I am talking about finding ways to improve yourself and make yourself different. That's the student angle. Now, as an institution, let me talk about the institutional angle. I think it is imperative for institutions to look at this foundational aspect, if not more, then at least as an equally weight thing with the academics that you provide. And I have been to Bihar, I have been to Samastipur, Motihari, I've been to some other districts like Gaya, and I've visited a lot of institutions. And trust me, the heritage that I've seen in Bihar is phenomenal. But things have to change. I'm not telling you to change your heritage. Your academic heritage is brilliant. Your academic teachers are brilliant. But we also need to get a foundational training system for the students so that they are more relevant themselves for the industry. So that not only do they go out of Bihar, they can go out of India. And I'm not telling them to only go out of India. I'm telling them to go out of India, gain more experience and come back as I have done today, so that they can also bring back more richer experiences. But for this, again, foundation is key. Now, I also said that I would be touching on the points spoken by the honorable previous speakers. So I will pick up one point here. One point I think touched on by both speakers, which was on critical thinking. Now, we do have elements of critical thinking in higher education in India. But the difference between that and the West is extremely vast. I am not saying you ape the West. I'm not saying you have to be close to them. But I'm saying one of the reasons for this is because the West, especially in the last decade, has been tailoring their education to make their students job ready, not just scholars. I think that's a very big gap in India, because even today we are learning academics as academics. Not all of us are trying to become academics, actually. We are doing a degree in business to maybe join business. I am not studying mass communication to be a professor of mass comm like Tushar. I may be doing it to become a big journalist. So for this, I really need to know the job specifications, and that needs to be tailored to my curriculum. So critical thinking is something that is applicable everywhere. And that is why I'm talking about it, because critical thinking itself should be more pronounced in the activities of your college and university. And why I use the word activities is I'm not telling you to drastically change how you are teaching academics, but I'm saying provide a support to your academics with these other very important points and very important recipes as such that can make your students shine and thereafter your institution shine. Now, another very important aspect here, and this is coming back to students, is, and perhaps that is because of this gap that has been created in terms of what jobs want and what institutions teach, is they think that they can skip HE, just sit their exams, go to colleges and, you know, get marks and just move on. Trust me, you can't move on, because when you're going to colleges, not colleges, sorry, when you're going to coaching centers, everybody actually in a batch is doing the same. You are not making yourself different. One. Number two, this is COVID-19. If you were already not different before, you need to be 10 times more different today for me to even think of hiring you. Because as Gerard said, most companies are running out of money. Why should we hire you? Government jobs, yeah, government jobs are there, but we all know what is happening to the government jobs in this country. They are lessening in number and our population is growing. Every month, 1 lakh individuals in India alone turn 18. That means in 3 years, 1.2 crore people at least will be at the age of job hunting if they are doing so post graduation. So just think about it. Differentiation is the key. When you're in HE as well, differentiation is the key. When you make your answers, it's how you differentiate that is going to make a difference for your grades, and how you utilize it, how you critically think, and how you create impact through your work. That is going to be key. For institutions as well, if you are able to include these with your students, then obviously the output from your students is going to be different, and that will make you different, and differentiation is key. Now let's move this employment and HE sort of amalgamation that I just spoke about for a while, and let's talk about research. Now, I have a very different viewpoint to the research to what Dr. OTERMANS said, and we obviously discussed this prior to this, and we are going to present this to you so that you have both sides of the coin. She has already talked about how difficult research can be during COVID-19, and it is truly tricky. Because if you are a science academic, how on earth are you going to use your lab? How on earth are you even going to get to your lab? So that's one issue. Then we were talking about field trips and field research. All of these are problematic, I understand. But if you're a social scientist, if you are depending more on qualitative data, which can be done easily, as we are doing, for instance, today over Zoom. If you are basically depending on quantitative data, which can be got through surveys, etc., there is no better time than this. Number one, a lot of people are spending time at home. They're not as busy as before. Number two, people have actually accepted digital lifestyle now. Today, if you actually talk to a grandmother who has been taking care of her children actively, she will accept digital education. That was not the case 4 months before. Let me give you an example. We had digital payments and currency in India, and I was not at all in India at that time. I was in the UK, and this opened with the Times Group. And guess what happened with the Times Group digital payment system? It flopped. Then came Paytm, etc., and they survived. But then happened demonetization, and now almost everybody uses a Paytm or a Google Pay or a Bheem or whatever else. Similarly, COVID-19 came. Now everybody accepts the digital way of communication, not just education, but communication. Use that to your advantage. You don't have to meet people in person to gather data anymore. Of course, in the West, we've already been doing a lot of digital data gathering, and we have been doing it in India as well. But it's like the Paytm of before the demonetization happened versus where Paytm is today. So this is when people are accepting it, utilize it. Secondly, in terms of a separate point, even if you are a scientist per se, and you're not doing any of these things, and you are determined to use a lab, put it on pause. You have expertise that someone in the social sciences section doesn't have, an economist doesn't have, a psychologist doesn't have, a literature person, academic doesn't have. So just think about it. If you spend this time when you cannot do your own research in your lab and join hands with these other academics, maybe just maybe you can create something unique, something of actual value that is not just writing papers day in and day out to be published every year for whatever the reason may be. And all of us know there can be various reasons for that. But I think this is a time when you can be unique about your own skill sets and try and join others. Now, let me just get this and attach it as a tangent to my previous point as well. And this is about your skills. Now, as academics, especially if you're a PhD student as well, you are essentially finishing the first 30 years of your life with the only experience of being an academic. So don't only think about the degree you have done. I'm a gold medalist in chemistry, good. No, but you think about the skills you have actually learned. You have learned research. You have learned research writing. You have learned problem solving. You have learned critical thinking. You have learned how to gather and analyze data. These are the things that you can utilize now. Break down your skill set. It's not that I need to be an IS officer. No. Why do you need to be an IS officer? What are your skill sets? I need to be a chemistry teacher. Why? What are your skill sets? Then you can also identify, and I'm linking this back to Gerard's point, then you can also identify the little gaps that you have. And if you project these, as this is a tangent back to my employment part, if you can project these to your employers, then they will employ you, because that's where you are different from the hundreds of others gold medalists that are out there. Now, coming back again to the research point, and this would be my last point on research. Now, I am not saying we are not in a position of crisis or we are not in a place of crisis. We are definitely in a place of crisis and we are really suffering. And I actually am stuck in Dehradun at the moment, although I'm from the London team. I'd come here to teach students and I've been stuck here for 3 months. And today I got this bad news that close to 20,000 cases again in India, so I can't fly out. But let's move this crisis aside. Every crisis has a positive side to it. Today, you are in COVID-19 situation, right? If you're a scientist or into the medical stream, what better type of research can you get than this? This is actually a very high time for research. If you're into education, what better time than to do research on this? Aren't we doing that right now? Sharing our own intellect and our own thoughts, and which can basically give ideas for research. How can we make education better in the new normal? It's not only about digital, because I'll give you 2 examples. At the moment in Patna, I'm digitally mentoring another company as well. It's called School Ki Ghanti, and they are very small company. They just started 2 months ago. It's a COVID relief company, and they are essentially using phone minutes to educate primary school children who cannot go to school, especially from slums. So that's one. Then I also talked to Anand Kumar ji the other day from Super 30, and he also said how he supported the nation on getting news, on getting education into the Doordarshan, because TV is accessible everywhere. So you see, there's so much of innovation out there. So if you're looking for research, this is a hot time to look for research. And if you get in there now, actually, if you would have got in there a month ago, you would have been one of the front runners. But if you even get in there now, you would be a front runner. So we are in a state of crisis, but this is a hot time for research. Don't complain about universities closed, lab is closed for students, there is no classes. Let's just think about how can we utilize this hot time, this sort of a time that comes once in a generation, and create impact. It's not about writing papers or doing research for students and everybody alike. It's about actually creating value out of your research. And what better time to do that than now? And you can actually directly utilize it in society. The government will also be willing to, without the red tapeism, try your solution, because they don't have any solutions themselves. So research, that's that. For work in this time and the new normal, the only way you're going to get employment is by being different. And for being different, firstly, get your foundations right. And secondly, analyze yourself so that you can project who you are, what you stand for, what your strengths are, not your degree. And finally, for the higher education sector in India on its own. Yeah, and finally, for the higher education sector in India on its own, and this I'm going to give a blanket statement about. Don't lose your foundation. You don't have to ape the West. Share good practice with the West, and there are always ways of doing things cheaper and easier. And this means, and I'll just give you one example for this. In the West, for instance, if we were doing a seminar or a webinar in this fashion, we would already have a paperwork file this big, because you would even have to take my permission to put my voice on YouTube and my face. And you would have to have a professional enterprise grade Zoom and a lot of other protocol elements. We don't have it. So already this is a much scaled down variant of what we would do in the UK because of technicalities, but with the same impact. And similarly, School Ki Ghanti is another example I'm giving. This is a girl who's just finished her graduation in design. Whatever money she had saved in college, she used it to trial School Ki Ghanti by buying phone minutes. And now she is already training 600 students in Patna, Bihar. So I hope I have been able to shed some light today for all of you. I thank you for your patience. And I am really, really privileged to be invited with my team here today. I thank Mr. Jha once again and the Honorable Principal. Thank you so much, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Dev. Is there any question? Is there any question? Bipin? Bipin?
Hi, I have a question for Dev.
Where is Bipin?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Dev. First of all,
congratulations
to your team, and congratulations to A.N.S. College for conducting such a insightful seminar. And
what's the question?
अरे उसको unmute करो.
Tushar, I can't hear you. I can't hear your question.
Unmute करो तुषार को.
Hello.
Just hold on. We are unmuting him.
Yes. What is the question, Tushar?
Yeah. So they. Hello.
Yes, please.
Yeah. My question is, what do you mean by getting your foundations right? Because we are talking about a different form of an education system, right? In which you are making people, ready for the world, as in I can say in a whole. So, what do you exactly mean by getting your foundations right?
Thank you so much, Tushar, for asking that question. And I'm sure maybe more people, especially on YouTube, would have had it since you've asked it. So what I mean by getting the foundation right is, at the moment, our foundation, our pillar in a lot of institutions that I've seen in the country is purely based on academics. Not all people want to become scholars. The foundation has to have other pillar legs. So one is your professional development, one is maybe personal development and life skills, and even well-being, which is now coming in. Even the government of India is going for mental health and well-being. So we have to look at the other pillars, and these pillars make up the foundation. One, and just to add one more point to that, at no point do we say an alternative education system, and neither, this is in line with what Baldi was asked, and neither is digital education an alternative education system. Education system, these are different systems that work complementarily to each other.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
More question? Bipin?
No, sir, I cannot see any question. Only comments are there in YouTube or in chat section also.
Comments are not question. So now we are reaching the Thanksgiving session, I think. And Bipin Nautiyal, over to Bipin Nautiyal. Do you have any question? Oh. Is there any question? Utna der mad do, 3 baj gaya. Chhod de. Bipin.
Yes, sir.
And now we are reaching the Thanksgiving session, and it's over to you.
Okay, sir. Good afternoon to all. As all good things come to an end in life, so is the webinar. A warm and graceful day to all. Respected principal, our most valued invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of A.N.S. College and the entire, let me call it A.N.S. College fraternity, and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all speakers for gracing your important work and sharing with us your findings and opinions today. A big thank you to our speaker, Dr. Paul D. OTERMANS, Mr. Girard Jensen, and Mr. Devaditya for their effort toward coping with higher education, research, and employability during and after the pandemic. It was really a wonderful and stimulating talk. It was a fruitful and amazing time for all of us. It clears many things and draw a coherent picture. An ignited mind is the most powerful weapon on the earth, above the earth and under the earth. And this is got through education. Education is the most profitable investment for the near future. The gradual evolution of leveraging learning technology received a disruptive acceleration in Q1 of 2020 by social distancing practices in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 has introduced a shared experience for leaders and learners to connect. Our first speaker, Dr. Paul D. Ottermans, discussed the steps being taken by HE sector in the West to quickly deal with the pandemic issues, social distancing, accessibility to technology for digital lessons, etc., and touches on the theoretical solution to digital and remote HE pedagogy. He also tells about adoption by UK for a virtual office hour. Also throw some lights on human being adapt new world of learning, transition of new world from traditional method to blended learning. Otterman Institute provide the environment of team-based learning and more practical approach by role-playing and part of problem solving, rather only theoretical, and also throw a light on learning analytics. Our second speaker, Mr. Gerard Jensen, gave the comparative details between the West and the East in HE based on his own experiences in India and the West, and also throw light on what skills can be developed at this stage to increase employment opportunities during and post COVID-19. His overall lecture is, if we sum up in one point, he said practice, practice, and practice. Our last speaker, Mr. Devadit, discussed about the best practices of the West and the East and talked about improving both personal and institutional education and employability training opportunities. He threw light on the quickest solution to improve employability post HE qualification, irrespective of pandemic situation and its duration. He shared his personal experiences and stressed on foundation. He gave real examples from the East in support of the previous speaker's theoretical discussion. Overall, our all speaker remind me about the Feynman. Feynman articulate that there is a difference between knowing the name of something and knowing something and understanding. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for our speakers who manage time for us despite their busy schedule and more of awake earlier as it was 7:38 a.m. in London when meeting was about to commence. We are all inspired by your words. Well, ladies and gentlemen, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheel start rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues of A.N.S. College and OTERMANS Institute who know their job and are result oriented. A special thanks to organizing committee, teaching and non-teaching staff for their unflinching support and coordination. Our heartfelt thanks to all participants for active participation. With these warm words and a kind message, we move to the end of today's session. At last, let me tell you about Otterman's Institute from where our speakers were. Waterman Institute is a specialized education and training organization in London who are currently also operating with governments and institute in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. Access your free lesson and resources on www.oiedu.co.uk/lessons for humanity. You found this in everything is present in our brochure. I hope all of you must visit the website. Thanks a lot to one and all directly or indirectly involved in the program. With the permission of chair, I would request to our host to end the session. Thank you.
Share screen sharing.
So this is just to let you know about the book and the website, and we hope to see you there and to be able to serve you further. And thank you once again for inviting us. And sir, back to you.
Deva, you must
Yes,
tell
sir.
you must announce that you can pre-order the book, because just now it's not available on Amazon. Yesterday I have searched it out, and that's why I had a talk with you also. So you say, sir, you can pre-order that. So you must say that, because that is just now, this is not available on the Amazon. That will be available from the 3rd of July.
Yes, sir. So there must. So everybody, this book will be available from the 3rd of July. Please do buy it if you like literature and interesting stories. The authors of this book have come from around the world, including advisors to Mr. Obama and Clinton. We have celebrities from India and educationists like Mr. Anand Kumar. We have legends like Bapi Lahiri. We have former UN envoys and ministers of the country like Sardar Amjad Ali. We have great academics, and we even have children and artists. We essentially have contributions, 82 contributions from 5 continents of the world. It is an incredible read with incredible artwork, again given by artists, and every penny from this goes straight to charity to help our frontline workers fight against COVID-19, which you know is still a big problem. So thank you for your support. And to get more information on us and our free lessons that we have made for you for the COVID-19 period, just go to oiedu.co.uk/very easy lessons for humanity, because it is a free lesson for all of you during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you so much. Thank you.
May I ask one question more question?
So I was actually expecting you to ask me a question, sir. I'll be obliged, sir, please.
There is one more question.
Yes, sir.
I could understand that as advisor of Obama, Clinton, and everything, all the big shot. I have gone through the reviews of the book, and I have seen that it is really a nice book. But why you have included Bapi Lahiri? It is the same Bapi Lahiri which composed music.
Yes, sir. Because Bapi Lahiri, we
it
were
is from
actually
your state.
No, sir. We were very lucky because Mr. Lahiri has composed a song for Corona, and he gave us lyrics to it, and we are allowed to publish it before he publishes the song. So it's actually a position of privilege.
Oh yeah. It's a very nice thing. I was unaware of that. Really, then he deserved. And thank you, and again, my thanks to you and Paul D and Gerard for giving so much time. Really. Anyway,
no
all the best. Now,
thank you, sir.
We are moving out. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Paul D. Thank you for coming here. Thank you. Bye. We'll meet again.
Definitely.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day.
Bye-bye.
Good day.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
ऑर्गेनाइजिंग टीम से रिक्वेस्ट है कि एक्स्ट्रा जो भी पार्टिसिपेंट्स है उनके जो है ना ऑडियो और वीडियो को जो है ना ऑफ किया जाए। आप सभी पार्टिसिपेंट से रिक्वेस्ट है कि प्लीज आप अपने जो है ना ऑडियो और वीडियो को म्यूट रखेंगे, ऑफ रखेंगे। आई रिक्वेस्ट टू ऑल ऑफ यू।
जब हूँ सिंथॉल लाइन से शुरू तो फ्रेश लगे समंदर से और सिंथॉल की छपा।
Very good presentation, sir.
ABCD पढ़ो। A for ball. म्यूट करना है। अरे अनम्यूट मतलब उनकी आवाज तक तो सुनाई नहीं देगी, आपकी आवाज उनको सुनाई नहीं देगी, इसलिए अनम्यूट कर दिया। अरे यार उन्होंने आपको कर रखा है म्यूट, उन्होंने कर दिया। अगर आप